Hi everyone, today we are looking at lesson 3, which is graphing slope-intercept form. Make sure you have your green packet of guided notes and something to write with. Our lesson objective is I will be able to graph slope-intercept form using slope and y-intercepts, and we have our Taylor Swift quote. So, the last two lessons we have been focusing on writing an equation in slope-intercept form. So the question is, what is the equation for slope-intercept form? Write this down in your notes if you remember. If you forgot already, the equation is y is equal to mx plus b. So then what does each variable mean? Well, m is our slope. And if you remember, slope is rise over run. And b is our y-intercept. This is where our graph hits the y-axis, okay? This is where it hits our vertical axis in our graph. So today we're going to practice graphing equations. So instead of looking at a graph and finding the slope and finding the intercept, today we are going to actually focus on, okay, here's an equation, how do I graph it? So if I'm looking at this equation, as a reminder, it's always going to be set up as y is equal to mx plus b. So right off the bat, I am noticing that 1/5 is my slope. So I have 1 over 5. But if you notice, I don't have anything for my b value. Well, I kind of do. I'm actually adding 0. So my b value here is 0. So whenever there's a number that's not being added or subtracted, our b value is 0. So when we begin graphing, we're always going to start with the y-intercept, or b value. So if we're starting with 0, I'm going to put a point on the origin. Now, I have to move with a slope of 1/5. Both values are positive, so I'm going to go up 1 and right 5. So I'm going to count up 1 and then count right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's my first point. For us to draw very nice lines, we should add a couple more points. So I'm going to go up 1 and right 5 one more time. And I have my 3 points. From here, I can go ahead and I'm going to draw my line. Now for this, you're probably going to need a ruler. That way we get straight, accurate lines. And there we go. There's the graph for our equation. So let's try this one. Again, always set up as y is equal to mx plus b. Well, in this case, our m value is -3. Always remember to stick a 1 underneath it. And then again, we don't have a b value, so we're adding 0. So 0 is our b value. Oops, that's supposed to be a 0. So again, we're going to start at the origin and plot our first point. Now, -3, 1. That's now we're going down 3 and right 1. So I'm going to count down 3 and go right 1. Down 3, right 1, down 3, right 1. I have a couple points here, so I am now going to draw my line through the points. And there's our graph. So now we finally got to an example where we do have a b value. So again, y is equal to mx plus b. Our slope is 4. Put a 1 underneath it. 4 is positive, so we're going up. 1 is positive, so we're going right. And then we have our b value. Our b value is -1. So I'm going to find my y-axis, which is my vertical line, and I'm going to plot a point at -1, which is right down here. From this point, I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, and right 1. Up 1, 2, 3, 4, right 1. And again, connect with a line. And there we go. There's our graph. And I want to point out one thing. I haven't pointed this out. Whenever we're drawing a line, we want it to cover the entire graph, but we also need to add arrows to our lines, okay? The line is continuous. It's continuing forward, even though the graph has ended, okay? So we need to represent that it's continuing on. Okay, let's try this one. Again, I have y is equal to mx plus b. Our slope is a fraction, so we have 4/3. Again, still positive. So 4 is up, 3 is right. And we have a b value, which is positive 4. So again, on my y-axis, starting at my origin, I'm going to count up 1, 2, 3, 4. That is our starting point. Now my slope is 4/3, so I'm going to count up 1, 2, 3, 4, and write 1, 2, 3, and there's my point. Now I can't count up 4 and over 3 one more time, but I'd like to add another point. So what we can do is if we have a positive slope where we're going up and right, we can do the opposite as well. But when we do the opposite, we're going to do the opposite for both. So I could go down and left, and it should still work. So if I go back to our purple point, I'm going to count down 1, 2, 3, 4, and left 1, 2, 3. And if I add this point, it should line up with the other two if I draw my line, which it does. And there we go. There is our graph. Okay, now we're getting into some special cases. So in this case, I have y is equal to b. Notice that I don't have m or x, right? M or x are not in this equation. So my slope, if that's truly the case, my slope is actually 0, okay? And that means my b value is 3. So here's the idea. I am looking for my y-axis, okay? This is what y is telling me. I'm looking for my y-axis, and I'm going to plot a point at 3. So again, y-axis from the origin, I'm going to go up 3. Because this does not have a slope, well, it does. The slope is 0. This gives us a horizontal line. Okay, so whenever you see y is equal to, I want you to think horizontal line. As long as there is no x value. Okay, if there's an x value, you have a slope. Therefore, you're going to graph the slope like we just did the last ones. But if there is no x value, x is gone. That means our slope is 0, and therefore we have a horizontal line, and it's going to go through the y-intercept. Then we kind of get the same idea here. So now I have x is equal to -2. So first of all, the slope here is undefined, okay? So undefined, if you remember, it tells us that this is a vertical line. But also, there is no b value because there is no y-intercept. Instead, what we're actually given is an x-intercept. So this is actually our x-intercept. So the idea is I'm now going to find my x-axis. I'm going to find -2 on my x-axis. And because the slope is undefined, I'm going to draw a vertical line going through -2. And then that is our graph. So again, this one has no y value in it. So if we look at the previous example, right, I wrote no x value. Well, here we have no y value. And that's how we're going to differentiate these two from the other types of equations that do have a slope and do have a y-intercept and are going to be a diagonal line. Okay. I would like for you guys to try these 3 questions. Can you graph these on your own? When you're done graphing these, unpause the video and I'm going to show you the answers to these 3 graphs. And here are the answers. So please check, make sure you did them correctly. I'm going to point out some key things. This is your B values. This was your x-intercept. Okay, and then they all graph their appropriate slopes. So please make sure that you did these correctly. If not, redraw your lines so you have them correctly in your notes. For the rest of today's class, make sure I sign off on your notes. I have this really fun activity right here that I think everyone should do, but again, it is a should do assignment. If you're not up to this challenge, then you do have an IXL skill of graphing. When you are done with this, I actually have a mastery check specifically for lesson 3. It's so important we know how to graph lines correctly. And again, I'm not going to have you move on until you hit 80%. So if you do both of these assignments and you're still struggling on graphing, I'm going to give you some extra activities as well to do because graphing is going to be so important moving forward. Also, if you do get the 80%, we're going to move on to lesson 4. Okay, bye everyone.